All right, well, hello, my friends. Welcome back. So right now for this lesson, I want to go through how to create an array from scratch with some functions that are pre-built into NumPy. Now, have you noticed I keep saying create an array from scratch? Because I wonder if you remember from previously, what were we doing when we were creating an array? We were giving the values that we wanted to the function. Now, those values were then converted to an array by the function. So now we're not going to give any value to the function. The function will create an array for us. Thank you very much. So yeah, it might not be very clear at first, but you'll see how straightforward it all really is. So we'll get started here. And yeah, so the first function that we will examine is the zeros function. So this function produces an array of zeros of whatever size we want. So in other words, the array we create will consist of all zeros. So the data type that we write inside the zeros function is a tuple. This tuple value is the size of the array that we want to create. So for example, if we make a two-dimensional matrix array, we will enter 2 values into the tuple. If we create a 3-dimensional array in space, well, we'll enter 3 values into the tuple. Oh, and look at this. Isn't that an adorable image? You can see the structure of 1, 2, and 3-dimensional arrays here. They all have index numbers. All right, so now we enter the size of the tuple. It will generate an array according to whatever size it is. All right, so we can start the practice. So see, the import code is ready, and I'm running it. So now I'll say NP and call the zeros function. And I'll do Shift-Tab in parentheses. Yeah, you see the document comes up, and so first it says shape. So in other words, we will determine the size of the array with shape. Like I said before, we will decide with a tuple. Then there's a dtype. So if we do nothing about it, we will output our values as float. So in this context, let's write 5 for shape. And we'll run that. So see how it produces a one-dimensional array of 5 rows and zeros. And as you notice, we didn't make any outside interventions, and the zeros function produced the array directly. Okay, so we said that there is a one-dimensional array. Well, how do we get that? It showed zeros in single parentheses. So this indicates that the array is one-dimensional. We will consider these dimension operations later, but that's enough to know for now. So to continue, let's just produce a matrix array of zeros with 3 rows and 5 columns. So here I'll say NP, and I call the zeros function because it will consist of zeros. And now I'll just enter the shape information into it. So what was that we said in the zeros function? The size of the array is shown with a tuple. So you see, I open the tuple bracket, and I am writing the shape inside. Now, what we said is an array with 3 rows and 5 columns. Now, since we've entered 2 values, we will enter a 2-dimensional matrix array. So finally, I'll just set the dtype parameter as an integer. So let's run that. All right, so look at that. We have a 2-dimensional array consisting of 3 rows and 5 columns. Now, how did we determine the size? Well, our values came in 2 parentheses, and since we set dtype as integer, we see all of them as integers. Yeah. Now, if you're kind of scratching your head going, wait, what will this process of generating an array from scratch be valid for? Like, where am I going to be able to use this zeros function? Well, my friends, I'll give you an answer. Sometimes we may need data for some purposes. It may be for educational purposes or just to practice, or it might actually be necessary to create artificial data in certain functions or loops that we have written. So again, when we want to create graphs, we might just need to have some artificial data. So in those particular cases, we'll be using the functions of making data from scratch and non-existent data. All right? But at least you know how to do it. See you next time.